Hello and welcome to the show. Now, an issue that's been going on for a while is loud music and how that affects your hearing. I've got Dr. Ziyaad Essop here, and he's going to tell us all about that. I know that sometimes I get to work in the morning and you hear these taxis and they're busy blaring away, and you think to yourself that, are these people not damaging their hearing? Now, definitely they are, and we're going to find out how. Ziyaad, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Now, it's an interesting discussion because we find this issue of loud music coming up. So when we're growing up, we're fighting with our parents. We want to listen to that loud music. They're warning us all the time that this is going to damage your hearing. It's uncomfortable to other people. But I want to get down to the nitty-gritty of it all, and that's how does it damage your hearing, and how do we avoid this kind of things? I mean, I know that some people are saying it's as simple as don't listen to loud music, but we're not going to get our youth to totally agree with us. So where do we start?
Okay, I think the most important thing is to first understand that there is basically a number of causes that can actually lead to hearing loss. So there is the genetic factors. You can develop an infection. It can also be as a result of an illness or disease. It can also be as a result of medication that you're actually taking at the moment. So then we come to the whole concept of the environmental factors, and this is where we are exposed to excessive amounts of sound, which directly has an impact on your hearing. So that is, as I said, there is multiple causes of hearing loss, and one of them is excessive exposure to excessive amounts of sound over a particular period of time. So that's just the causes, yeah.
But when we talk about hearing loss, we talk about, it becomes like a loose term. Someone saying that you might suffer from some type of impairment down the line in your life, whatever it might be. But to understand how that happens, I think it's important that you take us through the actual physiological changes that we see, and what is it that becomes damaged. I mean, people say your hearing will be damaged. What are we talking about physically?
Okay, so basically, as you know, hearing is one of the 5 senses that we have. And when we perceive sound, the sound actually travels via your ear canal, and then it comes to an eardrum, which we call in medical terms the tympanic membrane. And behind the tympanic membrane, there are 3 small bones.
The hammer, anvil, and stirrup.
Yes,
I remember that from school.
You're 100% correct. And this is then attached to a particular organ known as the cochlea. And within the cochlea, there are fine hair cells. And these fine hair cells, they actually are connected to a nerve, and this message is then translated to the brain, and we interpret it as sound.
So are they sort of picking up the audio waves that's sort of going over them, or how does that all happen?
Yeah, so they are responsible for actually transmitting the sound. And there is a variety of hair cells. So we have high frequency hair cells situated at the entrance. And it's normally these high frequency hair cells that become damaged. Yeah. Unlike other species, we as mammals don't have the ability to regenerate our hearing. So once it's damaged, it is gone.
And there's no, and these hair cells cannot be implanted or anything like that. It's gone, it's gone.
It's gone, it's gone, you lose it. They don't have the potential to regenerate.
And then what's sort of in my mind at the moment is you're talking about fine hair cells. Now, if you're talking about fine hair cells, I'm thinking that whatever's fine and small would be very delicate. So obviously, I think it's only pointing in one direction, that if they only have an X amount of capacity and you go past that capacity, we're going to talk about that damage that we're speaking about. So what actually happens in the damage process? Do they get broken off, or how does that happen?
Yeah, so basically, they lose the ability to transmit sound, so they can become damaged. So that is just one of the processes. There's a multitude of processes. I don't want to go too much into details. So the moment those particular fine hair cells become damaged, they don't have the ability to transmit sound via the nerves. And that's the issue that we sit with when we speak about noise-associated hearing loss. I can give you a typical example now. Say, for example, you've been to an event and there is excessive amounts of noise or sound. And the moment you go outside that particular event, you actually struggle to hear. But the ear does have a healing ability to a certain extent. That means within 24 to 48 hours, you might be able to regain that normal sound that you had before you went into that particular event.
So you might experience a bit of a ringing kind of sound,
ringing sensation,
standing
yes.
under a jet while it's taking off kind of
Yes,
thing.
so it's the zinging, it's the buzzing sound. But the moment that repeats itself, you end up with these hair cells being destroyed, and they don't actually have the ability to transmit sound. So that just gives you a scenario. Another example would be it also depends on the intensity of the sound. So we measure sound in terms of decibels, and the normal conversation that we're having now, that ranges between 60 and 65 decibels. And if you take the normal traffic, that is between 85 and 90 decibels. And
while with the window down kind of thing?
while with the window down. And if you're exposed to that particular noise over a certain period of time, it actually damages your hearing. And that is separate.
So Ziyaad, I want to ask you a question. Is it the once-off sound that comes off and there's this bang of 85 decibels and it's over in 10 seconds? Or does the prolonged part of it take effect? So that means 15 minutes every morning, for example, continuously.
Okay. So the way that it works is, So the way that it works is there is a range of sound. There is a range of sound. There is a range of loudness. Yeah. So the threshold for actually developing hearing loss is 85 decibels. So if you're exposed to 85 decibels for more than 8 hours, you will develop hearing loss. If you're exposed to 100 decibels, you're only allowed to be exposed to that particular sound level for a period of 10 minutes, because the moment you start going over that particular limit, there's a greater risk of you developing hearing loss.
Now can I just throw a practical example at you? A friend of mine's got a factory, so I go now and then to the factory. I cannot stand in the factory for longer than 10 minutes, because when I walk into the factory, there's this huge sound of these machines that is a bit too much for me, and I just want to sort of reverse out and get out as soon as possible. But they're in there all day long and that sort of thing, and I'm thinking, how do they manage? Are you not talking about that when you're saying prolonged periods?
Yeah, by law, they were supposed to be provided with personal protective equipment. So normally what would happen in that sense is they were supposed to measure the sound levels within the environment, and if there is a visitor there, they need to provide that particular visitor with some type of hearing protection, and that can either come in the form of an ear plug or an ear muff. And that will actually allow you to go through the factory. So in that sense, I think you should be providing you with hearing protection. And these laws are clearly stipulated that if you're working in a noisy environment, it needs to be clearly demarcated, and there needs to be provision for hearing protection as well for all the people working in that particular environment.
But you know, when we decided to do this episode, I thought about it, and I think that why you brought the subject up was that of all the senses that we do have, I think our hearing is one that we really take for granted. And I think that's why you said, let's do the show.
Yes, I totally agree. And what I also needed to do is I needed to make the public aware of our current situation. It's actually quite bad, because according to research, the latest research that has been coming out and that has been published, for example, the Journal of American Medical Association, they're actually stating that 1 in 5 individuals are at greater risk of developing hearing loss. And the World Health Organization has estimated that there is 1.1 billion individuals between the ages of 12 and 35 that are at greater risk of developing some type of hearing loss that can be possibly attributed to unsafe levels of sound.
So you said 1.1 billion.
1.1 billion.
That's about just around 1/6 or 1/7 of the world population. That's a huge number to all be suffering from the same thing eventually.
Yes, and then what we would have in that case is we would have a younger population developing hearing loss. So what you'd have is maybe someone developing hearing loss between the ages of 20 and 30, and then their quality of life decreases because they have to live with it for a longer period of time. Because normally one would associate hearing loss with more elderly people. So that is the scenario that might play out as well.
So that brings me to the next thing, and that was we kind of understand how the hearing loss happens and maybe some of the conditions that one goes through. And obviously, I think it's a bad thing to lose one of your senses in any way, whether it's a reduction of that sense or whether it's losing it in its entirety. It's a bad thing. It makes your quality of life less, either way. But we sit with the generation, especially now. We're in the world of devices. We're in the world, I sometimes call them vices, if you can. People are sitting on, I remember back in the day, we had these Walkmans and they were a little tape player. We've changed, all of that's changed. What I read yesterday was that people now listen to longer periods because something like an iPod can carry thousands of tracks, and there's no need to take a break, and the battery life is quite great. So for 10 hours you can sit there, whatever it might be, without any interruptions. You can listen to this track going on and on and on at these high levels. And we find this mostly amongst the youth at the moment. How do we approach this issue, because it is an issue?
Okay, so there's various ways that we can approach these.
I know it's simply switching off.
Yeah.
But we know that's not going to happen.
It actually goes beyond the smartphones and tablets. It's even the computers and the laptops that you're sitting with. Okay. So what most major manufacturers have done, they've actually developed a warning on the particular device. I mean, the device that I'm using, the moment
I that for the first time yesterday.
Okay. So the moment I go over a certain volume, it will say that going over this particular level can be harmful to your health. So most major companies are implementing these safety measures within their particular devices, which is good. But we also need to implement a prevention strategy, so education and awareness. Remember, all these devices are now being introduced at a younger age. 10 years ago, we saw maybe individuals between the ages of 10 and 15 being introduced to these particular devices. But now we have children as young as 3 and 4 that have cell phones, that have smartphones. So it's about having responsible use, and it should also be enforced by the parents that's actually giving them that particular device.
So when you say parents and we talk about children, we're always thinking about education on some level or another. Do you think that there's a lack of education around this matter? Because, I mean, if you walk around, parents don't want to sort of put their kids in bright light. They say, don't look at the sun, don't do that. So it's always about the eyesight and it's always about everything else, but it's never about the hearing. So in the end of the day, do you think it's education that's lacking here?
Education is the key, and there's various ways that we can actually implement it, from a schooling environment as well, from making the parents aware at different workshops. But we can even take it one step further by actually developing an app on the particular mobile device where the child can actually interact with this particular application, and the parents can even go one step further by actually locking out a particular sound level, so they know they can't go further than the 85 decibels, because most of these devices can go up to 110 decibels.
So 110, what's that? That's like, isn't that like an aircraft or something?
Yeah, that's a sudden sound. Yeah, that is similar to an aircraft that actually goes by, and you can imagine that particular sound over a long duration of time as well. There's also other methods that we can use. So I'll take, for example, simple practical measures. So we can apply the 60-60 rule, which means that we can use the device, but we need to give our ears a rest after 60 minutes, allow it to be turned up to 60% of the volume. Then there's additional equipment that we can use as well. I don't know if you heard about noise cancelling headphones.
Oh, that sounds interesting. Tell us a bit about that.
Okay, so basically what that means is, with the normal earphones that we buy from the common store, some of them are fairly poor quality, so we would insert it in our ear or over our ear as well. And the moment we're exposed to some type of background noise, I would increase the volume in order to accommodate for that particular background noise. But with the noise cancelling earphones, you are not exposed to that background noise, so you don't have the trouble of actually moving that volume to such an extent.
So to drown out the balance of the ambient noise. Yes. Yeah. So that's an important thing. So you're actually saying that people raise volumes because the key thing is to drown out the ambient noise.
Yes.
So they keep pushing the volume up.
They keep on pushing the
So,
volume
but
up.
if you were sitting in a quiet room like the studio now where there's no other interferences, you wouldn't need to turn that up all the way to get the same desired result.
Yes, you're 100% correct. The noise cancellation, the cancelling headphones needs to be used in the correct environment as well. It has its advantages and disadvantages. A typical example would be if you are a pedestrian and if you are and if you have this noise cancelling headphones and if you are unable to be aware of a impeding accident, it does become an issue as well. So one needs to look at the advantages, the disadvantages, and the particular environment that you are in at that particular time.
Ziyaad, what's an interesting thing is that if I think about myself now, and I listen to things and I listen to your voice, for example, I would feel that the audio level is correct for me, right? So I think that many people out there believe that the level that they're hearing things at should be at the right level because they're probably you live in your own bubble, so everything is fine to you. How do you find out whether you might have in the past suffered some hearing loss, or what you maybe think to yourself now to be correct might not be correct with whatever standard you as people in the medical profession would want to determine that?
Okay, so I'll just touch some base on some signs and symptoms. So what would normally happen is if you are experiencing a common ringing sensation, or if you have a buzzing in your ear, or if it feels as if you have your hand over your mouth, and that's the particular way.
People speak
Yeah, that particular muffled sound. So that is just some of the symptoms. It can also be that you in a crowd and you're always asking for certain issues to be repeated, and even the way that we sitting over here, and if you're unable to hear the person's conversation within a 3-foot range, if you see that your child has communication problems and they're not listening, that can be one of the possible.
Anyone watching the show right now where someone else is saying, why are you putting the TV so loud, and another one is saying, no, please turn that up, there's definitely a problem.
You're 100% correct, yes.
So I know that, I suppose that the simplest advice is that it's prevention in the end of the day, but we're living in the society that although we explain things to people and we bring things to people's attention, like we bring things to youth and we tell them, this is what you should not be doing, the impact of that is not understood fully until we have some type of repercussion. That's reality. How else do we solve the problem? Difficult question, I know, but is it about manufacturers? Does manufacturers limit and say, yes, there's a warning, but let us put a cap on it rather?
I do believe that there is room for improvement from the major manufacturers to make them aware. And then secondly, I think it's exposure by introducing a person that has hearing loss at school, by having workshops and let the person explain their personal story. I think there would be greater appreciation and the struggles that that individual has had during the course of his life. So there is the corporate sector that can become more involved as well by installing applications, as I mentioned, by having appropriate materials in the particular device that they sell. Then there is from the education component, then there is from the social aspects, which is the parents, as well as the media. We can even use the media as a form of informing the greater public.
Correct. Someone feels they're watching the show tonight and they feel that whatever you said in terms of what might be symptoms of hearing loss, that they are experiencing some of that, the muffled sounds, maybe people calling them all the time saying, how many times do I need to call you, kind of thing. So you have a problem going on there. What's their first point of call? Is it going via GP, seeking help? And if there is some level of hearing loss, I know that you're saying that the problem is not always repairable, but there must be some type of technological solution to helping them out.
Yes, so your first port of entry would be a medical practitioner. You might also want to go to an audiologist. So they need to confirm the diagnosis. So as I mentioned, there is various causes for your hearing loss, and that they will be able to differentiate by conducting certain examinations and tests. And at the end of the day, you will end up, if you do go to an audiologist, they will provide you with an audiogram, and then decisions are made according to that. So it's not just giving a blanket answer, but in the case, they might offer you a hearing aid. So there's various devices that assist.
That can assist, yes, correct. Yes. Now, I know that there's something that we want to discuss on an upcoming episode, and I know that you want to bring in another specialist for this, and that's what I did read up last night was the fact that we find a situation with youth especially that acknowledge that they might have a problem, that they want to listen to loud music, but there's some level of addiction to listening to loud music. So they are saying that when I listen to soft music, I feel I'm becoming sad if I don't listen to music with my earphones. And when I do, I suddenly feel my mood is changing. So psychologists and psychiatrists are finding that there's some level of addiction to loud music, right? Now, so I know that you want to bring on another specialist to discuss that component, and that's what we're going to do in the future. Anyone watching the show right now that feels that they're addicted to listening to loud music, do you think it's like any other type of addiction that they can be brought down, be weaned off from what they're doing?
Yes, I believe it's first acknowledgement. So they have to go through the entire process of health promotion. So you first have to acknowledge that you have a problem. You need to be made aware that if you continue in this particular pathway, it is going to be detrimental to your health and your future quality of life. I mean, that can be in the work environment, in your social environment as well. So the first step, you're 100% correct, is acknowledgement, and then knowing that this is detrimental to your health, and then going and finding the correct individual that can assist you in correcting your addiction, and that applies to any type of addiction as well.
Ziyaad, it's been an interesting one. Thank you for coming onto the program. In the near future, I do want to follow up on this particular matter, and that's the addiction to loud music. And I know that you are somehow becoming a regular guest on my show with various issues. We do get feedback from our viewers, and there's lots of things that they do want to know about various other things. So I would like to have you back soon again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me on the show. It's much appreciated.
Dr. Ziyaad Essop, something that's very interesting, pertinent, something that we're not really listening to, and that's loud music that we shouldn't be listening to. Do find more of this on my website at faizalsaid.com. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.